Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody is well. How are you ladies doing this evening?
Fine, fine. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Oh, of course. We're so happy and delighted. I myself am a huge fan, and I was so blessed that you said yes to come on the show. I'm very, very excited. We
You're
have
so sweet.
Jacob in the house saying, actually, Vampire Kisses manga was one of my first physical copies of manga
Oh,
I ever bought.
that's so
And
sweet.
we have Maya Morrison saying yes.
Oh, cute.
Hello. We have a lot of people
Oh,
chiming in now, so let's get
cool.
started. So, for our listeners and viewers that do not know, this is Ellen Schreiber.
Hi.
Am I saying that correct?
Yes. Uh-huh.
I'm always a reader and not really a pronunciator, so thank you for that. She is an American author that has written Vampire Kisses, the series, both the manga and the regular. She's also done a few things with the werewolves as well, not just giving the vampires some love. So you have quite the plethora of stuff. Now, when did you realize you wanted to become a writer?
Well, I was acting at the time. I was in Chicago and I started writing a book just for fun. And it was an adult book and it really wasn't going anywhere. And then fast forward to a couple years later, um, I read a young adult book, and at that time there was not the young adult books that there are now. It was like pretty much Judy Bloom and like Little
Hmm.
House on the Prairie. And I really liked this author, and I was like, "Well, that's cool. It's different. It's fun, and I could relate to it." So I changed the adult book and started writing it as a teen characters, and I was able to finish in like 6 weeks. So I was able my oldest brother had some books in Europe actually and
Oh,
published. So he showed it to his publisher and they said they would publish it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's fantastic. So I did started to think that was the first time, honestly, I thought about actually writing as a career. Was when I got published. And then I thought, well, this is fun. It pays and let's do this. And I just kept doing it and then stopped acting and started just writing all the time.
oh wow. That's awesome though that you still got to express yourself in a creative way because acting is also very artistic and creative as well as writing.
Yes.
Um who was your favorite author? I'm curious as to who you got your influences from.
Well, at the time that I was reading Francesca Lee Block, and I really
Oh.
liked her style. Like I said, at that time, there wasn't very many authors that were writing young adult. And when I was in high school, I really didn't connect to a lot of things because of that. And now it's like there's really a book written for any interest in any character and any creature and beyond. So it's really nice for because like I write the young adult market, especially for teens to get it's sometimes harder to connect, I think, when you're a teenager because when you're in school. Now when you're an adult, you read because you love it, right? When you're a
Mhm.
teen, you have to read things that the teacher
The
gives you.
teacher,
And
yes.
sometimes it connects and sometimes it doesn't. And
That
that's what was
mhm.
happening for me. It was like, it became more of a chore than something fun.
Fun. Yes, I definitely understand that. And I didn't have the appreciation for like Catcher in the Rye. They made us read in
Right, right.
school and it's like I don't care about this guy
Yeah.
and it's so unrelatable, but what I love so much about Vampire Kisses is just the protagonist. She's very isolated and to be able to have somebody kind of represent you in a book is just so incredible. And then her relationship with Alexander, it's so wholesome, and she's
Oh,
like kind of coming to age, and there's a
right.
lot that a teen would gather from that because they very well could be experiencing some of those issues, and it's so refreshing to be able to read that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
We have Elizabeth chiming in saying, rereading them as an adult right now, and I'm floored at how much I've forgotten, but also at how much I connect with these characters that are essentially half my age.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank
Yeah,
you.
making those connections, it's beautiful.
Yes, yes.
And then we
Yeah.
have,
Because
uh,
when you write it, you're just like you're isolate yourself as the writer, and you don't really realize that if anybody isn't going to even read it, much less then connect to the person that you're the
that
character
you're
you're writing.
currently. Yes,
You
exactly.
know
I
what I
think
mean? And then
I
it's like years later that it could come out, and even now people read. It's incredible in that way because you're just in your little mind, like a little laptop in your mind, and that's all. And
mhm.
then to have people connect to it has been really amazing.
So we have a twerking poro as asking, "Do you still do book signings? My wife is a huge fan, and I'd love to get a dedication for her." Oh, that's so
Oh, that's so
sweet.
sweet. Well, yeah, I haven't done any lately. I've done one once in a while. I have 3 kids, and getting back into writing, but they were very young, and I was like all involved, so I wasn't able to get out and go do the signing. So in the meantime, anybody can always email me, and I can always send out a book plate that you can put in your book until that's time where you actually are able to meet up at the book signing. But if you
Aw.
don't want to wait for that, that's always a possibility.
Oh, yeah, especially if there's a special anniversary coming up.
Right, right. Yeah.
Aw.
So you can always
Um,
email me at ellenschreiber.com. And or
aw.
no, well, it'll go through that, and then it'll say Ellen Schreiber at iCloud.com. That's my email.
Aw, we have a lot of love and support for you. Love your books.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you.
Uh, so I do you, Kat, do you have anything to ask Ellen? I want to give you the stage a little bit before I overtake with
That's
questions to my
No,
favorite author.
I love hearing you nerd out. I love it.
Aw.
But yeah, Ellen, I remember when I was young and I got my hands on like my first Stephen King. It was like I
Yeah.
believe it was The Dark Tower,
Oh,
The Gunslinger, and I was reading it, and it was just all this craziness going on, and I was like, I can't believe they're letting me read this.
yeah.
I'm like looking around, like, oh no, don't take
Right,
my
right.
book. Like take anything, but don't take my book from me.
Yes.
My mom would be like, come watch TV with the family, and I'm like hiding in the den, like
Oh,
reading.
that's great. Yeah, it's like the opposite now.
Yeah,
A
Yeah.
lot of kids. So that's great that you're a reader.
But yeah, so I'm more curious about what your writing process is. Like how do you make time to write, and how do you balance like your work life and your writing?
So when I was writing, I did not have kids, and I would always watch, like you said, Stephen King movies. I can't remember the title of it. It's Johnny Depp in there, and he goes to this cabin to write. And I'm like, why do they need to go to a cabin? Well, then I realized once you have kids, it's a whole different story. Like when it was just me, I could do it all the time, anytime. So it was easy. Now I'm getting interrupted constantly, so I can write a sentence and I get interrupted. And they're a little older now, so I'm getting more time, and that's why I'm getting back into writing. But it is hard to do that. It is hard, because then you have to prioritize, or put more boundaries. I guess I didn't put enough boundaries down, because I wanted to play and hang out with the kids and everything while they're
Aw.
young.
Mhm.
So a lot of it is the other part is being able to write when it's happening. Because some people I've heard, writers will say, I write at 5 o'clock in the morning before the kids go to school and things like that. And sometimes it's hard for me to do necessarily a time. So I've been finding lately that I have my iPad and I'm watching like on Netflix or something before I go to bed. And then all of a sudden it's like, I turn the Netflix off, and then I'm like, oh, right. So I write, maybe from anywhere from 10 to 1 or 2 in the morning. And that's my private time kind of thing. So I
Nice.
think the
The
positive,
night owl.
yeah. And I think the positive is that it's so much easier with the technology to be able to.
Mhm.
And the other day I went to the mall and I think I just had my phone and I was like, I just sat there, all the people walking around and shopping. I just sat down and wrote at the mall because I had
Oh,
time to do
wow.
it. And I actually wrote a lot then. And I was like, oh, this is interesting, because you one hand would think you're distracted by the people at the mall, but I wasn't. That was actually easier for me than being distracted at home from all the stuff you do there. So,
Interesting.
Ah, you were more in the zone, as they say.
right, exactly. Yeah. Because no one was
So,
asking me what to do or, food or get
Mhm.
me a snack or something. So,
I'm sure prying minds want to know because you did tease your writing a little bit. What are you writing? Are you writing more vampire stuff, or can you just give us a little teaser as to what you're writing?
well, at some point, I would like to write a Vampire Kisses 10. That's I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that would say that the way it was left, they have all these questions that maybe they didn't have before.
Mhm.
So that's something I would like to do. Um,
Ah.
yeah. And then also, I've been working on an adult novel that's a romance, like more without creatures, just normal, man and woman like each other. And then a middle school book, which has some, I don't know, like magical kind of thing, but not magical like what we think of it, just more like portals and things like that.
Oh, portals.
So, yeah. So
Ooh, that
those are
sounds fun.
well, thanks. So those are the three things I've been working on in the last year and flipping around between the three of those. And they're all different.
Oh.
As I'm describing, they're all,
Yeah, all
different
very
stuff.
different.
Yeah.
And it just kinda depends on what you're in the mood for that day, if you wanna
Right.
explore some Vampire Kisses 10 or if you wanna
Right.
do some magical portal action. That
Right.
sounds
Right. Right.
fantastic. We have a ton of questions pouring in, goodness. So this, viewer wants to know, how did you come up with the Vampire Kisses stories? Ooh.
So, um, originally, I lived in a poor family at the time, and I tend to look out my window a lot when I was living there. And I lived near a park, and you could see people in the park, and there was two women, not two women, two young girls, and they were gothic dressed, and they were standing on the swing swinging, and it was like the middle of summer, and it was so hot, and the image was just really stuck with me, and I kept thinking, well, maybe I'll write a poem about them or something like that. And then another point, I was reading, I think it was an adult book, and there was a teen character in it that was a very incidental part of the book, but I felt like she was the most engaging. Like if the book was about her, that would be really interesting. So at some point, I sat down and I kind of married the two. I was like, I'd like to write about a girl who is very engaging, like not powerful in the sense of like superhero, but she's just not, she just knows who she is. She knows what she wants. She's fearless and she's confident. Um, but because, and I pulled in the gothic part and I thought she's different than everybody. And at the same time, I lived in a very conservative part of town where they were very noticeable. And I wore black all the time because I was doing theater, and I was very noticeable when I went out. I could always tell people were looking because I wasn't wearing the same clothes as everyone else was. And just that feeling of kind of being ostracized and just by the way you look, all the, and then being a teen and just pulling all that. So all three things that start, and then Johnny Depp. I thought about Johnny Depp and I was like, okay, because I wanted it to be a romance. So I based Alexander the Beginning on Johnny Depp. And I just really started from there. I didn't have the end of it. The first book, I had the idea that she wants to be a vampire, and he makes her feel like a vampire, whether she's turned into one or not. He makes her have the feeling of a vampire, the eternal love, finding someone that you really, is different than everybody else, that you connect with in a bonding way, like a Dracula kind of character would. And that she feels, like she can fly, like a bat in a sense, metaphorically, because of the feeling she has towards him. So that's how I started it. And then 9 books later, I was very lucky because I wrote the first book and the editor came back to me and she said she wanted a second and then a third, and then they would sign me up sometimes 2 books at a time. So at those points, when they came to me and said, we're going to sign you up for another book, and they would ask, what is it about? And that's not how I really write. I kind of just sit down and organically it comes to me. But in those cases, then I kind of had to go to the publisher with some sort of idea. So I kind of had to make like a little outline or something and give them some idea. And it really, if you wind up reading the series, you'll notice, it wasn't something I premeditated, but actually happened, was a new character would just come in every time. So it was really about the new character and their involvement in Raven's and Alexander's life and in Dullsville.
Yeah, I did notice that. So it's kind of interesting that you had to bring ammunition with you to make sure that they would buy it. So you're trying to sell something that you weren't 100% sure exactly how it was going to go, but you had to be convincing enough for them to sign the book.
Right, because they asked for it and then they would like ask for 2 at a time, and I was like, I don't know what this is going to be about.
Yeah.
But then you got to kind of think and say, well, maybe I'll organically write the outline and make it, a short outline, and I would let them know some of the things would happen as I write. But I find that I know Raven very well, and then Alexander, and then I just sit down and they pretty much tell the story. Same thing with Trevor. Trevor was supposed to be a very incidental character in the beginning because the mystery of Alexander coming in later. But I wanted some romance and some sexual tension in the beginning. And then so I started to write this one guy that was opposite of Raven, Trevor. But then I would start writing and then he would keep coming back in scenes. And then he became one of the most major characters in the whole series.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you incorporated all that. Elizabeth writes in, I was a goth in a small town with no friends as an adult. It's just me and my husband. Crazy relatable. I got Ron Weasley, not really an Alexander, but he has his moments. Ron Weasley is still a good option.
He's my favorite.
You're my favorite author.
Oh, thank you.
Angel, that's so nice.
Yes, thank you.
And then Jessica writes in, Ellen, your books made me love to read. Vampire Kisses are my favorite. I love going to Hastings to buy your books. Helped me a lot in my teen years. Now that I'm older, I appreciate them even more.
Oh, thank you so much.
Lots of beautiful people pouring in a lot of love. Thank you guys so much.
Wonderful.
I still can't believe Vampire Kisses is so old. I was shocked when I picked it up earlier this year. Yeah, it is older, but it's still so relatable and so real.
Yeah, they changed the covers halfway through it because in the beginning the covers had a raven on it, and then she started growing up the model, but the books were coming out later than her age would be, and she was starting to grow up, so that they redid all the covers and everything. So that was another thing that kind of updated it as it was being released to make it a little bit more modern.
So here's an interesting question that I also want to know. Would you ever continue, Cassandra writes, would you ever continue the manga series or branch into comic for Vampire Kisses?
Yeah, I would love to. It would just, be something with Tokyo Pop. Tokyo Pop was the publisher, and HarperCollins. So they collabed on the mangas. And yeah, I would love to do more. They were so much fun. And I loved reading mangas. And then when they came to me and said to do that, I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. I really like, and it's nice too when you go to the either the book signings, or I do a lot of school talks, because not everybody at that age wants to read a novel. And sometimes it speaks to readers like we're talking about, in the teen years and tweens, where they just want to read something that's more in the format of a comic or manga, graphic novel. So it's nice to have both.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then we have, this comment is so awesome to me. Hey Ellen, I remember seeing you in Tulsa back in 2011. I'm so glad you're doing well, and Vampire Kisses will always have a special place in my heart.
Oh, that's sweet, Nova. Thank you. That's so cool. It's a great name.
Yes, Nova's a great name. I have a question. I'm working on my own vampire series.
Okay.
It's what got my wife talking to me. Thanks for making her love vampires.
That's sweet.
Did you read other vampire fiction and to inspire your work?
Actually, I didn't. Because at the time when I wrote, there wasn't the vampire series that are out now, and out, when mine started to come out. And everything that I read about vampires or watched the movies, Dracula, et cetera, were all violent and gory. And the part about a vampire that I like the classic vampire, was what made Dracula like somebody for eternity. What was it about, and the name slips away from me right now, who she is, the character's name, but that he loved and wants to stay free time. I mean, especially with, relationships that come and go so easily nowadays, especially, to have that kind. And so that's what I wanted to explore. So I started with the romantic idea. And that's why Alexander, rather, is not the bloodthirsty vampire, but he's more the romantic vampire. And that is what he's looking for. And then also that isolated him from the other vampires and made him an outcast. Because not only the outcast, he's a vampire, but he's an outcast because he wasn't a bloodthirsty vampire. So that's really how I started it, Vampire Kisses. And I'd watched, a lot of the Dracula kind of stuff growing up. My dad always liked the werewolves and the classic Universal monsters and stuff. So we always watched those, and, those are fun. But no, when I read horror stuff, it wasn't necessarily about vampires. It was more about just general scary, stuff. Yeah.
Here's a good one. We need some Vampire Kisses merch. It's so nostalgic.
Oh, I'd love to do that. We'd just have to get somebody to back it and to produce some things. But yeah, that would be fun. I don't know. There's stuff now that you can do, like on Etsy and some of these other stuff. Maybe I should put some stuff into
it. Oh yeah. It looks like you have a lot of support that's willing to
that would be
buy.
fun.
Might be a nice little thing.
Yeah, maybe I'll look into that. That would be cool.
We need to start a Fable book club to reread the series. Oh goodness, that would be so fun. I would love that.
Yeah, that would be great.
I've never joined a book club, but if we made a Ellen book club, I'd definitely be there every time.
Thanks. And I do want to mention real quick, Luna and Kat. You're in my books. Kat is a character in the manga series, and Luna is in the novel series.
Yeah, it's like it was meant to be,
It was.
Awesome.
It's fate brought us together, guys.
I know,
See?
I love it.
And I was suspecting that Stephanie Meyer, that wrote Twilight, may have been a fan of yours. But it just kind of sounds, because there wasn't really anything like that beforehand. I think you kind of broke into that kind of genre where vampires can be sweet as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I really, really do. Thanks.
Oh, I love that. So what is your favorite book, Ellen?
Um, well, like I said, I do love Francesca Lia Block's books. I think they're fun. And off the top of my head, there's a lot of different I really actually like reading biographies mostly, which is strange because, that I don't read necessarily vampire books or, when I'm writing, I don't read because I feel like I don't want things to come into my head. Just like, I play music, then that I can absorb and makes me write. It gives me the mood. But I feel like um there was, gosh, the name escapes me, but he was an adult author and very like a hippie guy and stuff. And I just remember he was out of there when he was writing it and it went in there. And so when I was reading the book, it's like my thoughts were going like wild and stuff. So I thought I'll stay clear of reading. So when I do read, I tend to read biographies. But what I do
Nice.
realize is that it actually is good for writing because it always seems like they're the same couple things in a biography of a person's life. Like when they look back, they're always, even with, I always say with, everybody's name's escaping me right now. Elizabeth Taylor. She had like, 100 husbands, right? But she always went back to talking about when you read or listen to her biographies, it was like two of them that she really loved, Burton and one of the other ones. And my point is that a lot of times when I do see the biographies, read them or watch them on documentaries, there's always seems to be one or two people that they really liked. You know what I mean? Out of all the people. So as far as a romance, person like I like to write and watch those things, I always think about that. And then, like I said, put it into like the Raven and Alexander, like they're the ones, the soulmate kind of idea. But when you encapsulate somebody's life, what are the points that make it interesting? Because the mundane, the everyday stuff isn't that interesting. So it's another piece of what I incorporated kind of into my writing, if that makes sense. What is it that is interesting during their day,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah,
lifetime? You
Absolutely.
know what I mean? To make you want to turn
Definitely.
the page kind of thing.
yeah, to kind of something that grabs you, because if you read something and it doesn't make you want to it doesn't make you care, you're just going to be like,
Right.
I'll just deal with it next time. And that next time will never come. I
Right.
I found that to be one of the things that I struggled with as a reader is I need to be pulled in, because
Yes.
if I'm not getting anything out of a book, I'm just gonna go, oh, okay, I'll read more of it tomorrow, and that tomorrow becomes tomorrow's tomorrow and tomorrow's
Right.
tomorrow,
Right.
and it
Right.
just and then it'll sit there on the shelf for like 2 years, and you're like, oh, maybe I should pick that up again, and it just
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
happens.
Right.
It's just
Right.
collecting dust. But I think with your series, because of how you develop the characters, it kind of like it doesn't just in your face pulls you in, but it like kind of strings you in, strings you in, strings you in, and next thing you know, you're like deep in the series, and you're like,
Oh,
yeah,
I
I
appreciate it.
can't stop reading this now.
Oh.
I'm invested. It's an investment
Oh,
now.
that's sweet.
Like
That's sweet.
like a chapter, 2 chapters in, you're like sold, and you have to read the whole thing.
Oh, well, thank you. I
Kind of
kind
like
of,
some
yeah. Go
I was
on.
gonna say, kind of like some delicious pie that you take one bite and you gotta
Oh,
have the whole thing, you know?
that's
Mm.
awesome. I'd love to put that on the jacket review, like
Some
delicious
delicious
pie.
pie.
That's cool.
And how has your personal life influenced your writing? I know you were talking a little bit about being a mother and your children, but how's that influenced like how you write, or is it not influence?
Well, when I was writing a lot, it was more like the dream of what I wanted things to happen, you know, pre like marriage or pre finding somebody, you know, the dating scene kind of thing. And so, and the main thing too is that high school, you know, it's like high school is so impacting to me, is like, you know, there's so much heightened emotion and drama and everything you want. And I guess, you know, I felt like those years, I felt like I knew more about what I liked and what I wanted than as I got older. And then all of a sudden, when I was older, it's like, I don't know what I want anymore, kind of thing, for some strange reason. And that's part of what I wanted to write about Raven, was that she just knows what she wants. Now, my son is starting middle school, and I just realized some of the things that he was starting to go through, like a couple days ago, even was things that, you know, are in the book. And I was trying to tell him, I was like, there's a reason I write about high school all the time. Like, that's the main thing, because it's such an impactful part of your life. And there's so much angst and so much drama. And I don't even remember your original question, was something about the personal. Okay. So a lot of it is really my imagination, like things that I want more than things that are actually happening. But then I'll, you know, incorporate things like how I felt in high school, which I felt like an outcast, though I was actually a cheerleader. And I would look back on it and I think, oh, maybe, you know, she could have been popular, but I didn't feel that way. I always felt like, you know, I wanted to act, which was different. I felt like my school was huge and nobody knew who I was. And I just felt like this little mousy person. And I was, you know, writing Raven was a release for me to be like somebody who's fearless and able to do things that I wouldn't have been able to do, like go in a haunted house and things like that. So now that I'm older and writing different things, some of those things are coming into my newer works. You know, the middle school stuff has happened. I totally know so much more stuff about middle school now because my kid's going through it. So then I'm throwing in the video games and things like that that I wouldn't have necessarily known if I was that person, like maybe 20 years ago, writing about middle school, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that has changed because 20 years ago, I mean, you would watch Saturday morning cartoons and
Right.
maybe play the Super Nintendo, but it wasn't like the online, you know, the
Yes,
Instagram and the social media and then the online video games. It was none of that.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
society has evolved to where your writing might, you know, evolve with what's current, you know,
Right.
trending.
Yeah. And I'm okay with you know, looking back, it's like Raven's series worked because it is an isolated book. It is a small town. There are fewer people.
Mhm.
And Alexander's world is very antique Victorian, you know, so he'll maybe go through with, you know, not the latest products, electricity, that kind of stuff, where I can get by with a lot of that, not
Yeah.
being totally, you know. So I think, and that to me was what I wanted. I wanted the mystery of, you know, things that aren't so
The
technical, the
yeah.
moodiness, you know, the
Mm.
imagination.
And the
But
real antiquated lifestyle
yes,
because, you know, you don't have dinner by, you know, candlelight
right.
anymore.
And so much
It's
of that stuff,
romantic.
I was just gonna say, so much of that stuff is just
Mm.
so romantic, and spending more time with people than we do now. Even, you know, everybody says with the
Mhm.
cell phones, everybody, even out to dinner, even at the dinner table, the cell phones, you know, you have to say, you know, cell phones at the table. I mean, you have to make a distinction of what can, and, you know, where the boundaries are, where, you know,
Mhm.
I watch,
And Ellen, I love that you mentioned even though you were a cheerleader, you still felt outcast.
yes,
And that's just a lot of what how high school seems to be. Like when you're in it, you feel like it's so important, and this is all that matters, and that
It
things are never
does.
gonna
Exactly.
change. You
Right.
feel, and then you get older and you look back and you're like, "What the hell? What was the big
I
deal
know.
about that to begin
I
with?"
know.
So
So much energy wasted. It truly is so much energy wasted on
So speaking
everything.
of your older books and moving to what you're writing now, after writing such a successful series, how do you block
Yes.
out that pressure to make something your audience is going to love more? Like anytime you're writing, at least when I'm writing something, I'm always like, okay, I want this to be better than the last thing that I wrote, and I can't imagine that pressure after having something so successful and then coming back to it. How do you kind of block that out so you can write?
Well, I never thought of it. Now you're scaring me. I never thought
Oh,
of
Sorry.
it. I never even really thought about this. No, I think because the thing that I was freaking out is I was writing an adult book, and so it's different than the YA series that I normally write. And I think that was what was getting me, is like, is it the way people are writing now? Is it the same kind of stuff? Um, and then being able to tackle some of the things as an adult book that I don't tackle in the YA books, which is, more romance kind of stuff. And um, but yeah, so I'm realizing, based on your question, it was more about the genre and the market of placement of adults to young adults
Mhm.
that was making me neurotic, than the actual what I'd already written, you know, because I guess I don't really think of, if anybody's going to read it, it would be great, that kind of stuff. It's more back to Raven, like we're talking about, it's back to connecting. Does the reader connect with the story? And that's what I think I'm most obsessed with,
Well,
is the
you're
connection.
still writing for you could think of it as you're still writing for your same audience. They've just grown up. So
Yes, exactly. No, that's a very good point. Thank you. That's reassuring for me. That will be helpful. Yeah, it is interesting because now, yes, because it is, the books came out every year, and then, you know, that everything now is, I'm finding, is so immediate. Like, in Netflix, and you binge, and you're done with a whole show in like a week's time, where
Mhm.
it used to be on, one episode was on once a week, and now everything's so sped up. So when you reread a series, or you read a series for the first time that's finished, you can read them quickly. But when they came out originally, there may be a year or 2 years between each book. So yeah.
But I think that anticipation is important. Like that angst in high
Yeah,
school,
yeah.
the anticipation of,
Right.
ooh, what's gonna come next? And it gives
Right.
you a time to kind of create your
Yeah.
own what
But
possibly could happen, and then you read the difference.
yeah, no, I think, but then it's like, but then your audience grows, which, like you're
Mhm.
saying, now they're older teenagers, they were going through it, but it might have taken 6 years of their growth if they were reading it when it came out, because they came out once a year. But yeah, there's this big transition, even in my mind, as a consumer or an audience, of the all of these shows dropping all at once, and then now I have to wait a week for another episode to come out. Sometimes I'm like,
And speaking of how things have changed, how do you feel the publishing industry has changed from when you started to now? Are there any big differences that you've picked up on?
I think a couple things. The main difference is there were more publishers. There were a lot more publishers when I first started. Then they kind of, well, there was one, I don't know, like during a recession, like Borders went out, and that was huge. That would just like dropped everything. So Borders went out, and then some of the publishing houses either merged together or went out. Some of the editors, over the years have gone. And then there was the big E thing, is everything going to be electronic now? So that
Mm.
happened for a while. But as we see, people still want to pick up a book. They still want to feel the paper, and get us. For me, it's like, get a sense of where I'm at in the story. I never, it is an ebook. I never know where I'm at. How many more
Mhm.
pages do I have? And I like the feeling of knowing that I've the accomplishment of, oh, I've read, 100 pages and, so there's been the ebook, and then now with the social media, majorly, I think it's the marketing is completely changed. You can market your own things, and then that's help the publishing. Some of the people have, gone to a TikTok and get their name out first, and then they can go to a publisher and say, oh, I have these many people that like it already, now read it, or an agent or things like that. That's definitely changed. You don't really have that as a tool to promote yourself to really, in a sense, the agent before. So, and I think on the other hand, they maybe took more chances, I don't know, with writers and things, because you didn't have the choice. You had to, I like this book as a publisher, try to promote it.
And if they know they're not taking that much of a chance, if they have such a following on social media, they know at least they can figure out with their algorithm, how many books they're going to sell. So they're like, okay, here's we can do a little risky here.
Yeah.
So
now, on the other hand, if you're a writer, author, and you don't have that, it's hard, because they're two different things. Marketing is completely different creatively than writing or singing or dancing, whatever it is. And I think especially writers naturally are very introverted. So then to have to sell yourself, or, become this other person, the self-promotion, I think can be difficult, because it's kind of antithesis of what your personality is, is saying what you do every day. It's like, who cares what I do every day? That's because,
I think that's where acting really helped you, because you started as acting. So you're not so concerned about other people are thinking. So you're like, oh, no, I'm going to do me. I love that.
Right. Yeah, because I know a lot of us have, when we go to a book signing, it's like you're in your office or wherever you write for like 12 hours at a time by yourself. You don't have, you're not in an office space with other workers. And then you go to a book signing, and then people are there, and all of a sudden you need to talk in front of people. It is very different experience for if you're making your living doing the writing part, where you're not really exposed to being, around people a lot. So that's always interesting too. And it's always great then to meet other writers and the people that read the books. And so it is a nice experience as well.
Aw, the Black Hood writes, just remembered one of my main highlights during my teenage years was Ellen featuring me on her Facebook when she would repost photos with fans at her book signings.
Oh, well, thanks for coming to my signings.
Aw, I missed it. Honestly, when you were doing the book signings.
Yes.
I had very, my parents were very sheltered. Like, they sheltered me a lot.
Sure.
I was lucky to have the books, but I wasn't allowed to go anywhere or do anything. So
I get it.
I missed out, but I'm kind of happy that I could connect with you and we can get those autographs that I missed many years ago.
Sure, absolutely. Well, that's the thing, like they're saying Facebook, and at one point it was MySpace. I don't know if you even heard of MySpace now.
Oh,
but it's like in the beginning it was like MySpace, and you get all these followers, and then like the next night it was done. It was like over. And then it's like, then you had to restart a Facebook. And then, so that's the other piece of, like, you're talking about the modern world right now, is going through the technology and finding the Instagrams or what it is to promote your books. And the other things that's different too is just the actual writing. Now, when I started, I was on an old, I call it like a Flintstones, computer. And I've always used Macs, but Apples, but it was very, very, do kind of thing. And like I said, modern day now, going to the mall and using my little like iPhone and writing a book on it. And I'm like, I never would have thought that was possible. A lot of times I'll print out I still a lot of times do old school, I'll print out and look at it so I can look at it on paper. But yeah, things have changed. And what they put on in the stores. Oh, the other thing, the hugest thing is not having bookstores. I mean, I take my kids and we went to Barnes and Noble. I'm like, this is a bookstore. This is an actual bookstore. Look, they've never been to one. And isn't that
Mhm.
weird? You know?
Yeah.
So right now, to me, I feel like the Walmarts, the Targets, the Myers, those other kind of stores are the bookstores because they have the books there, along with obviously Barnes and Noble, but they're harder to find.
Yeah,
And
they
the
are.
independents are extremely wonderful. Those are the best, but they're hard to find too and keep up. But it's just to go into the store with books. It's like so funny. We took it for granted, I think, all these years, and it wouldn't like be happening. But look at it now. So my thing always is like people want to see movies, people want to read books, people want to get together. It's just the way it happens. Technology changes. You just got to try to adapt as best you can.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, from back in those days, what I remembered is the Scholastic Book Fair,
Oh
where
yes,
like you'd get a little printout, a little magazine style printout,
right,
and it showed you all the little books that they'd have at the store
right, right.
when the book fair came, and you
Yes,
would show your mom and be like, "I want that one." It's 99 cents or whatever. Because
right,
back in
right.
those days, they had a little section in the back where it was like all the 99-cent dollar
Yeah,
books. And it's like you would try to convince your mom to let you pick one or two or three from the
I
back of the
know.
magazine that were
Right.
on sale. And those were the heydays of, I
Yeah,
think, of
yeah.
like books for me, was like trying to convince your mom to let you buy stuff from the
Right.
Scholastic book sale.
Right, right. And they still have them because I went to one the other day with my kids. They still
Oh, they
have them.
do.
Yeah.
Oh,
But they're
wow.
just different. I mean, they're just more books or different kind of books. And there's a lot of like,
Do they
um,
still have the sale sections?
yeah, they do. They do. And they also
Nice.
have like lots of pens and pencils and fun little like fidgets and things like that. That's what I always get. I'm like, okay, with the book, but also I get all
Oh,
the merchandise too. It's like very exciting. All the fun
aw.
stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's just people trying to adapt to still getting the books in the schools, still getting them in the libraries, and then we still have libraries, thank goodness.
Yes, yes. The public libraries are just amazing
They
because
really
it's
are.
just, here's my card. We let you borrow this book, bring it back,
Mm-hmm.
take another, and it's
Right.
just fantastic. And Nova writes in, my boyfriend and I have talked about cosplaying Raven
Ah.
and Alexander sometime.
Well, if you ever do,
Oh,
you got to send me some pictures.
yes, yes, please. We'd love to see that. Madison is asking, will the Audible version of Book 9 ever come out?
I get that question all the time. So they did all the whole series, but the last book, and it was
Oh,
like, oh, thanks. We need the
oh.
last book because that's a valid point. People read, or rather read, people do the audiobooks, and that's a big
Mhm.
thing. So I'm going to try within the next year or so to try to address that again and see if it's possible that they could get that up and running, because there is been so many people that have asked me that, because it's so disappointing to say right now there isn't, and it's so inconvenient when you've
Mhm.
done the whole series that way not to be able to finish it off.
Finish it off,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Aw. Madison, I really hope that Audible book can come out, that way you can read, because
yes,
I know how it is to have, like, whether you have dyslexia, whether you have, like, sight issues or whatever, having that other option to be able
yes.
to get the book, the contents of the book is
Hmm.
really impactful to a lot of different, whether it's audio, or visual readers. I think it's very important for any reader.
I
And
agree. I absolutely agree.
well, thank you so much. And now I'm just before we send you off to
That was
continue
so quick.
writing more. I know it's been almost an hour. Can
Oh
you
my
believe
gosh, it
that?
went so fast.
Time
Yes.
flies when you're having fun.
Oh yes, thanks.
So, what can I know you teased a little bit about Vampire Kisses 10 and some other, and then the magical stuff that you're working on. As of right now, do you have any timelines for those, when those are going to be out, or are you still kind of in the pre phases of planning?
Yes, the pre-plays is the finishing. Yeah, I'm still writing them. So, that would be is whichever I finish first, then I will go to my agent and show her the book and see what she thinks, and then if she would approve or, you know, based on her feedback, sending it off to a publisher. So those would be the steps, but at this point, each one is not finished. I'm still in the actually on all three of them the creative point of writing it, then I go back and edit it, but all three
Mm.
mostly the one that's most finished is the adult book. That's the closest one.
Wow, wow. Ooh. And what is the adult book about?
It's about a young writer, and she lives in Chicago, and it's her several different romance experiences that actually help her write the book that she's writing.
Oh. Ooh. And are you from Chicago, by the way?
No, but when I was acting, when I went out of college, I went to Chicago, and I lived there for 5 years and was doing improv
Oh.
there and acting there, and so I just happened to decide to use it as a place, a locale for the book to be set in, and it really lent itself. It was really exciting to write it there.
Nice.
I had a quick question about
Yes.
how are you working on 3 different things without getting them mixed up? Just like you're a big biography fan, I'm a big documentary fan,
Yes.
and in one of the documentaries I watched, James Cameron was writing Aliens and Rambo: First Blood 2,
Oh, how
and so
funny.
he wouldn't get them mixed up. He had 2 different desks
Oh,
and
that's
would listen to
interesting.
different music that kind of worked with the theme to get him into the world of that
That is
movie he
fun.
was writing. So I
Yeah.
was wondering, did you have something similar that you do? So that, or do you have like a outline that you look at so you know where you're at?
That's interesting. No, I think I just kind of go and sit down and pull up whichever one I'm and where I've left off and then pick it up there. Like you said, for me, sometimes I'll do music, different kinds of music when I'm writing. So maybe more adult kind of songs for the adult book and, I don't know, for the young adult kind of stuff. But yeah, I just really kind of pick up where I'm, different moods, I guess. It's like sometimes whatever mood I'm in or what I want to try to finish. And then it's like now it's like, oh, you know what? I'll do this. I want to work on this. I try to give myself a deadline lately
Nice.
to give myself, so I'm not floundering kind of stuff. But
Is it better to have multiple things to work on? So if you're stuck on one thing, you can jump to another. Does that make it easier?
I did that in the beginning. I wrote, I think, Teenage Mermaid, and then I started
Mhm.
writing Comedy Girl, and then I went back to Vampire Kisses and finished that, and those were published. And then went back to Comedy Girl, and then I realized that when I was finished with Comedy Girl, eventually it was good that I took the time and kept going back because then I would think of different things than I hadn't thought at the time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so fun. Well, you heard it here first, guys, on Delight and Fright. Vampire Kisses 10.
Well, we'll
We're
see.
so
Hopefully.
we're so excited. The news of Vampire Kisses 10 just made my year.
I just have to get a publisher, so we'll see.
This makes me so happy. Thank you, Ellen.
Well, thank you guys.
There's gonna be a Vampire Kisses 10. Yes, Angel. That's definitely just like Ellen said. If she can get the publisher, I'm saying we because we
You can
definitely
help
we
out.
want it. And
We'll start
I
the
love you,
campaign.
Ellen. Yes, yes. We'll start a petition. We'll try to
Awesome.
rally the masses. We need it. We definitely need it.
Fantastic.
Thank you
Fantastic.
so
Thank
much
you
for being with
guys.
us. And then hardcover box set. Ooh, that's an
Ooh.
idea.
Ooh.
That is definitely an idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
nice
love all
leather
your
bound.
ideas. Yeah.
Well, Ellen, thank you so much for your time this evening. We
Thank you.
appreciated the the discussions. I appreciated all of you guys also for
Yes.
viewing and
Thank you,
listening.
everybody.
And I'm glad that you guys brought in the questions as well to get
Yeah, that
your
was
questions
great.
answered. Oh, we love you. Oh,
I love you
thank
guys
you.
too. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Well, Ellen, hang tight after we finish the show to just to
Okay.
make sure the files and everything are good to go. But thank you guys. Have a
Thank you.
fantastic rest of your evening. Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Hello, boils and ghouls. It's your old pal, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And I want to thank you for listening to Delight and Fright with your hosts, Luna and Cat, a podcast for outcasts.